afternoon. Hi. Sorry, just give me 1 second because I accidentally tweeted out the wrong thing. Not that it makes any fucking difference anyway. But let me just let me quickly do it. Never know, you might get one view. Oh, for fuck's sake. It's making me sign in, is it? Okay, of course it is. Anyway, how you doing? Thought I'd try something, and obviously this is good. This is something that I might refine over time. And it's I think because I'm talking a lot about sort of things that I think are obvious, right? And I'll show you, like, I started to, as you do, whenever I try to map things out that I'm thinking about, or try to sort of do a brain dump of all of sort of the moving parts and everything. I mean, how do you condense 20 years of what I do? Many of which I did, a lot of it is sort of proprietary, sort of based on experience. A lot of it is just that I'm like a walking AI, right? It's like, I'm always, but when I try to do a brain dump to try and explain things to people, and yeah, I've done it like in agency land, like you generally, I think when you're trying to sell something to someone, they're not really interested in the details. The problem is that, so I've never really had to write those details down. Okay, so it's really at that sort of basic level, and people have just gone, "Yep, do it. We trust you." Like that's usually where it ends up. And also because you're already talking to marketing people and people like that, they already sort of know roughly what you're talking about. So you don't need to do too much explanation. And unfortunately, a lot of the time that I'm talking about things, it's like, okay, what is socialism? What is this? What is basic concept? What is this? What is a sales funnel? Okay. Some people can't even tell the fucking difference between a Facebook ad and organic content. What's the news feed? Like, it's a different sort of thing when you try to explain it to sort of people who are using this stuff. Like, this is one of the things I think that's beneficial for sitting in front of a it's one of those things where I think we tend to assume that people know what we know. And I don't know, you might have seen this with maybe like an older relative or something like that, where you assume that they know how to use things. Fucking, what the fuck? I'm not having a good week. But you might assume that people use things the way they do. Like sit and watch sort of someone, you know, an older person try to use, say, Google. Like you'll find that a lot of people will put web addresses into the Google bar, not into the top bar. And up until sort of modern browsers had sort of the ability to search within the browser bar, originally it used to cause a lot of confusion for sort of older people that there were two bars and they didn't quite know where to type. And I think that what we tend to do is project or displace our own knowledge and experience onto other people and assume and get frustrated they don't know what we know. And that's where I think it's a lot of conversations that break down that way. And also, so making clear that you define things, but also just going, okay, take the time to explain the basics. Now, the problem is that to explain the basics would require 20 years of experience. It's a lot of stuff. It's to get good at this shit, it takes probably 10 years of experience plus a degree. There's a whole lot of theory, and that's if you're only doing one part of it. That's not if you're trying to sort of also tackle the political stuff and the outcomes and the geopolitics. These things are fucking complicated and difficult. So what I thought I'd do is maybe try a series just to show people, not to scare you, okay? Not to scare you, because I don't like scaring people, but also these fuckheads who think that what I'm doing is a conspiracy theory when it's like, you clearly don't know how this shit works. This is like back of napkin shit for anybody who knows how to be evil, right? This isn't even, what I'm trying to do is show that this isn't even difficult it's not even an intelligent person's strategy. This is it's built into sort of user experience design. So what I thought I'd do is say, all right, let's have a challenge. Let's think of something awful. Let's think of like an audience that we kind of might want to get a sale to. And then, you know, set sort of a goal. Like, obviously this is a hypothetical. So you got to take some leaps. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I just thought, for example, let's do a few of these and maybe see if we can unpick and maybe expose some of the mechanisms, tactics, and abuses, and just how easy it is to get around any fucking regulation or rule or block that is put in front of you. If it's like, this is why I think because you're not going to convince anyone who's doing this kind of work to stop. Okay. That was my big mistake, I think, early. When I started to see that things were being misused, I spent the first few years going, all right, well, I'm going to set up an agency that doesn't do that and changes hearts and minds. Be the change you want to see, all that stuff. No one was interested. Didn't get it. And they didn't see what I saw. Because, again, I didn't do that stuff. So, and also most digital agencies also aren't very transparent in the way they do their business. Like, there's a whole bunch of them that are on retainers, don't do much work, and they just bill, and they stack out their business with sales staff, but don't actually deliver on much. And they've just got a lot of automation. And, I think you'd be surprised how much overbilling is actually in the industry as well. Like, it's such a racket. It really is. And that was my problem, is that I was an honest player who wanted ethics, and I tried to compete with people who had none. And obviously that didn't work. So the next step that I thought, okay, well, what I need to do is research this thing, go do a PhD. They didn't want it. Too multidisciplinary. They didn't care. They don't care. That's not something, because one thing with the academy is that they don't give a shit about any sort of commercialization aspects or any sort of, they don't really give a shit about anything other than scholarship. And, unless you can bring, again, it's just one of those things where you sit in the what's the word? The fault line between sort of various things. And it just seems to be just a big blind spot that no one's talking about. No one is really incentivized to change, because the people who can change it make a lot of money doing it. Clients benefit. Tech companies benefit from not dealing with this, even though they do kind of a little bit behind the scenes, but a lot of it is just wallpaper on a fucking broken, on something with structural problems. And I'll show you how. Legislation, governments are fucking useless. I mean, they're getting better, but like the GDPR, like all you need to do is have no servers in the EU and do sort of an indirect kind of campaign. And again, that problem is, it's sort of like the cat's out of the bag. Unless you're going to go sort of full China and block everyone and block everything, it's a little hard, right? So I thought what I'd do is let's have an awful product to try and market, and I'll just sort of back of napkin this thing and see how we go. Like, if there's value in it, I'll do more, but it's just a fun little thought experiment, and more. I'll try to do a course or something that's a bit more. I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know if people are interested in learning this shit. I feel like it's at a point where people don't give a fuck, and the algorithms are against me. And like, like all of this is why when I get frustrated, like at like no one watching my shit or listening to my shit, because it's like, I know if anyone knows how to do this, it's me. And I know that this is not, that anything that is coming like out of these sort of, if anything that's going viral has money behind it. That's kind of a rule now. There's no such thing as like accidentally viral. Like that horse bolted years and years ago. And I think that's one of those misconceptions that people want to keep. Well, the media definitely want to keep. They want to make it look like it's spontaneous when it's very much engineered. And also people like me are now shut out. So people who I used to consult on how to do this stuff, like specifically how to go viral, fucking A/B test this stuff. This is what I did for a living, which was coach business people on how to think about viral marketing and how to sort of nudge people, how to persuade, how to have fun in the process, all those things. This is what I did. Okay. For am I having connection problems? Possibly. Anyway, that would just add to the fucking pile, wouldn't it? So, no, but again, now with all this sort of, this is the sort of, the thing that trickles down with all of this sort of speech stuff is that people no longer have the ability to build a business, grow an audience, reach people say anything that goes against sort of a commercial imperative. Like, as I've said, like, I think I used an example before with the SEO example. That was right. It's in the mass formation psychosis article that I wrote about how, well, at the end of the day, it's just fucking crushing small business and small voices and independent people, because at the end of the day, person with the most money, otherwise known as merit, wins, right? And it's pay to play now. And unfortunately, it's really a war between who can pay the most and who can manipulate and who can pay the best consultants who know what to do and how to get around all these things, to do some pretty fucking unethical shit, and no one's talking about it. So I thought, let's have an exercise and say, all right, let's do a challenge. Let's do the rational choice theory exercise. Assuming nothing is real, nothing exists, and all things being equal, and and I have a dick and lots of money, no ethics, and there's no censorship of all ideas, and no operant conditioning happening in the background to persuade and punish you every time for various behaviors. Okay, and I'll show you how we can do that too. So let's do this thing. All right, so the project I thought of, because none of you fucks gave me anything worthwhile, and one of the ones was a COVID one, and I'm not touching that because that's just, again, no-go zone. Can't talk about that. I already have no one. Actually, maybe I should. Maybe I should just go anti-vax. That seems to make people popular these days. It's fucking twisted. But so I thought of one which is basically, all right, let's try to sell. I had to think of something. Could be anything, but it needed to have sort of the right elements in it, which is sort of a what seems like an awful product sold to a fairly benign target segment over time using nudges, but also so it also sort of exploits sort of blind spots and vulnerabilities and the shit that you care about. Okay. And so that's where I thought, okay, let's sell spontaneous combustion kits to babies. Would you be able to sell that, you reckon? How long do you think it would take? I don't know. I reckon depends. Okay. First of all, what you need is a lot of money, first of all. But, and this is one of those things, the reason why I wanted to have there be a disconnect between, be it something sort of explicitly terrible, okay, is because people don't just go, I'm going to buy. This is the thing I think people don't get about this sort of ad model, is that there's sort of the surface ads, which is buy that thing, it's perfectly fine. Oh, the law exists, that's illegal, that would never happen. Okay, so you've got spontaneous combustion kits. Okay, I haven't thought the product through. I don't know how it would work. I haven't thought that through. But again, that's just to babies. So, don't know why. It could be anything. It's funny. No one gives a shit. Okay, so what do you do if you want to sell like something like spontaneous combustion kits for babies? So let's say you're an agency, a digital agency or PR agency, or usually you'd work with a couple of different agencies, okay? But let's just assume for like simplicity's sake that it's one full service ad agency that does all of the in-house stuff, or it's an in-house team. So it's like, they do all the marketing, you have control over that, you have the creative, all of that sort of stuff. Okay. So at the strategic level, what you would do is you would have a meeting with let's assume this is like a C-level top priority for the CEO, that you must find a market for this because you only have spontaneous combustion kits. They expire within 2 years, and you've got, let's say, 18 months a year to sell them, to get people to a point where they're buying spontaneous combustion kits for baby. Stick with me. So what you would do is you'd sit in a meeting, right? And you'd call this meeting, And so first, before you even bring the agency in, okay, what you'd need to do, and if the agency was any good, they'd ask this question and set that expectation up front. But what you would do is you'd go, okay, so how many units have we got? Okay, what's our margins? How much can we spend? What's our budget? You know, all that sort of stuff. Okay, this is now number one priority is selling, is getting this sort of, not only getting, you know, shifting like this, what is it, spontaneous combustion kits for babies, but we need to make it so that we, obviously clearly illegal, obviously clearly unethical, obviously fucking murder, okay? But what we need to do is navigate this in a way where we wriggle out of all liability, all culpability, and all responsibility. Okay, and this is the thing that I'm focusing on, is the slippery shit that you can do to sell something that all the rules prohibit. You can't just go on Facebook and say, here's a spontaneous combustion kit for babies. Buy it. Doesn't work that way. Okay, because first of all, if you tried, it wouldn't get past the ad system like detection. So they've got all these things where you can't sell weapons or firearms or alcohol. You can't do political advertising. You can't do all these things. So what do? I've got to move these things, and they're the only two platforms. They got rules against that sort of thing. Well, I can't do that. And also, if someone sees it and screenshots it and makes a fucking fuss about it, I'm fucked. Because we've got these spontaneous combustion kits over here with, I haven't thought this through. We also sell paddle pops. I don't fucking know. We also sell ice cream. I really should have thought this through better. No, but we also sell like this. This is our mainstream products over here. We can't have these things touching. We need to do some dark shit over here because we've got some leftover spontaneous combustion chemical shit. And we're just going to do this whole Monsanto business and sort of create a market over here. Okay. But what do you do? What do you do? So how you would approach this thing if you are really fucking unethical. And I'm saying it's not impossible. It would be basically, if I was in that room straight away, I would see what they're trying to do and I'd go, well, no, I'm out. I'd quit. Okay. But also, you could also silo these projects in a way that people didn't know what they were actually selling. And that's another thing where you go, okay, let's silo this stuff and keep an inner circle of people who know what product we're really selling. And, you know, you can actually use a whole marketing team without anybody actually knowing that that's what you're doing. And that's how this stuff sort of works. It's a bit scary, actually. So anyway, so you'd start with a first meeting and you go, okay, so the goal is to sell, I don't think we're going to get a run on them. Although if you've had a newborn, you probably like, you know, you're, oh, fuck, I can relate to that product. Yeah, please. But... and I've chosen a deliberately extreme example because obviously if you dial it back, you can see how this stuff works in a more subtle way as well. With perfectly legal products that are perfectly fine, but probably potentially sort of borderline in the ethics department. So what you do to have the meeting, go, all right, I want to move, let's say we only got 10. Let's move 10 units. Okay. We just need 10. We just need to sell these 10 things. Now, because there's not many of them, I'm going to make them $10,000 each. We've got to make $100,000. We've got to break even, get rid of this shit. Okay. Within a year and a half. What do? Yeah. All right then. Okay. So, first step, you set the goal and you set the budget. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. There's one way, which is that you would go, all right, I need a blank check. This is a stupid goal. Not a stupid goal, like pretty hefty goal. You're going to need to throw some money at this, but it's going to need to be a bit more elaborate. What we're going to do is we really need the first thing that usually you would brainstorm. Okay. This is not before you do the actual work, but I'm saying the first meeting where you sort of brainstorm and you first have the discussion and you go, all right, so back of napkin, what do I think we should do? First thing you would do is go, okay, what celebrities would be on board with this? Who do we know that could be on board with this and help us? That's usually the first thing because it's a nice little shortcut. Okay. Now, I don't think times are changing, but I don't think there's many sort of A-list celebrities or influencers that would take money and explicitly sell spontaneous combustion kits for babies. All right. But what you can do, now, I'll talk about that after. So let's go through these steps. So the first thing you would do with a campaign like this is you'd sit down and you'd set the goal and you go, okay, so what are the numbers? I need 10. All right. Can you find 10 people worldwide, okay, that will buy spontaneous combustion kit for babies for $10,000? Okay. The answer is there's 7 billion people on the planet. Of course you can. Okay. That's a key principle. Of course you can. You just got to find them. Okay. It's not so much a matter of it's not a matter of whether they exist. It's a matter of finding them. Okay. That's one principle of sort of customer centric experience, is that they're already there. It's just a matter of finding them. Okay. That's a problem with ethics, because obviously somebody who's doing that, who would demand that product, is quite unwell. And so this is where someone with no ethics would go, oh, well, you're just going to buy it. That's cool. You're a customer. Don't care. That's capitalism. It's benign. It's neutral. One of the things in user experience design that they say about this process is that user experience design, which is what this is, okay, is agnostic, or that it's neutral, or that it's fairly benign. And I've said this before, that this is a process that can be used to sell lipstick and can be used to recruit you to ISIS. They're the same fucking principles. And the problem is that, again, we're in an industry where, first of all, there's no accountability, there's no, board, there's no real oversight, and any regulations that are put in place, they're quite easy to get around. Okay. Now, again, I'm not saying that I'd say that it's quite risky. I wouldn't say that you should do this in any way, shape or form, but I'm saying that if I can think of it as someone who's worked in the fucking thing for, 20 years, they're doing it. You can assume that they're doing it. And I want you to see that this could also be applied to any terrible idea, any political thing. It's largely what got Trump elected, this sort of stuff. And it's unfortunately the myth that this is benign or neutral. It's not the case. It's not neutral at all. It has tremendous downwind impact when it comes to when it's used for politics. We're seeing that now. We're seeing that division. We're seeing the radicalization. We're seeing the nudging. And what we're seeing is fucking people being abused and whipped up into a frenzy to do some pretty heinous scapegoating and stuff. So this has a real world impact, even though you might not see it. But I thought, okay, I'm not going to spend too long because this is really boring. But I think I might do a course at some point that really just goes through step by step if you want to know. I don't know, whatever. So obviously I can't consult in it because it's not something that, the only way that I can consult in it is to just sort of teach people how to do it ethically. But once you teach them how to do it unethically, I don't trust anyone in my fucking industry. If I'm honest with you, I don't trust them because I know what they're doing and they won't quit and they'll just take my shit and use it to do more heinous shit. So it's like, no, don't do that. Anyway, it's by the by. So, all right. So the first thing that you would do, now this is something you might not know, okay, is the first question that you ask is, first of all, getting clear on what the goals are. Okay, so you clearly define your goals. Okay, what are your goals? Your overall goals for the business. So this one might be to prime a market for another bigger product later on that's slightly more explosive or more efficient or, something like that. Maybe a green version. It's environmentally friendly. An environmentally friendly spontaneous combustion kit for babies. So, so that might be, so you've got your short-term, medium-term, long-term goal. Your short-term goal is obviously to shift these units and sort of, break even, okay? You've also got, your medium-term goal of, getting new customers in that you may be able to sell more stuff to later on. You've got the long-term goal of building more and more demand over time to the spontaneous combustion kits for babies, right? So honestly, this is easy. You just go to a fucking mummy forum in the first 6 weeks and then sell them and you go, yep, find the 2 vulnerable people that want to throw the baby out the window, case closed. Too easy. Anyway, let's be a little more creative, shall we? So basically what you would do, the process. So the first thing you want to do is get clear on your goals, get clear on the objectives. So the objectives might be slightly different to the goals. They sometimes overlap. I'm not going to go into that. If you've done any sort of businessy shit, you'll know roughly what I'm talking about. But you can see how you might be familiar with some of these things, but some of them, because you work in a siloed part of the whole thing, you don't see sort of the bigger picture of what's happened and why we're kind of hitting up against this wall with, these cancellations and these gaslighters and the bullies taking over and this massive, massive storm of people who have too much power, and also people who are defending them and telling me I'm crazy because it's just organic activism. It's not organic activism, okay? There's no such thing as organic activism anymore. You can't get traction without paying money, and these things are expensive. I'm sorry, but if you've run a marketing campaign in the last fucking couple of years or try to build an audience, you'll know how suppressed these things are. It's just not the case. There is no such thing as spontaneous viral shit anymore. Anyway, TikTok maybe, but again, there is some spontaneous shit, but a lot of it is because it's useful for propaganda. There's one. Or it's being used to sell something else, or it's just, there's way too much money in this stuff. And this is why it's also a source of sort of, corruption and dark money and stuff in politics, but that's a whole other thing. Do other things. So the first thing you'd ask is the goals and the objectives, and then you'd set the KPI. So in this instance, it's just, 10 units, and let's set 150. Okay, so let's say, if you're selling 10 units, you'd probably want 250 subscribers to your email list. So that's based on a conversion rate of roughly, whatever that percentage is. That's about an average conversion rate, okay? So a conversion rate is for every 100 people, okay? Conversion rate is like the percentage of that. So for every 100 people, 3 people buy, that's a 3% conversion rate, okay? And that's what's always being tested in the background, is how to sort of inch those like extra percentages either way. So what you want to do, so you can't just sit there, especially if you've got a limited budget, you can't just go, all right, well, let's just run a radio campaign for, we can't run a massive radio campaign saying we sell, well, actually it's 2022, you probably fucking could, no one will say anything. All right, we quit, it's moot. You could actually just get away with this and no one would believe it anyway. That's where we are. Anyway, let's assume it's not current year. All things being true, you wouldn't just run a commercial or a radio spot or a mainstream campaign or have these things, in plain sight. You wouldn't want to run. This is what's different, I think, between digital campaigns, where I think a lot of people think it's just straightforward ads and that everyone sees the same ads and all that stuff. They don't, okay. But you can't just run an ad that says buy your, what is it? Spontaneous combustion kit for your baby today. Because first of all, you've also got, in Australia, it's the ACMA, like Advertising Standards Board, okay? Most countries have some version of that where there's like, legal requirements. You've also got, you've obviously got like standards, the public standards, outcry, the fact that this stuff is all unethical. So that's a bad idea. You can't just go and advertise that. Doesn't mean it's all right. Not a problem. You just need a slightly more creative marketer. You just need to know who your customer is. So the first thing that you do, okay, who's going to buy this thing? We only need 10. We only need 10 of them. Okay, who's going to buy it? Who's going to buy it without us getting caught? The main thing is also goal, objective, don't get caught, okay? You want to really understand before you start, because this is a risky marketing campaign. What you want to do is you want to understand specifically who you're targeting, and also when you do spend the money and you do target them and you do invest the resources, that when you do actually show that ad, it has a much higher chance of them clicking on it, okay? Now that's the thing that they say is like marketers, they tend to pretend is just fucking neutral. It's not neutral. This thing is a weapon, okay? This relentless pursuit, this is, I call it the data cult, right? Which is that this data-driven marketing, this race to the bottom, where, you know, constantly just refining and refining and refining, so that, you know, when you stack the deck in a way that, you know, when people, so that when that 100 people get the ad and 3 buy it, you want to keep making it so that it's 5 of that 100, and then 10 of that 100, and then 12 of that 100. But ideally, you don't want to run that ad 100 times. You want to run that ad 20 times and have 5 people click on it. Or you want to run that ad 5 times and have 5 people click on it, you know, like convert, right? You want to keep squeezing and reducing and reducing and reducing that down so that you spend as little as possible. Also, that helps the objective of not getting caught, because very few people will see it. And also, you know, there's lots of benefits to that. This is one of those things in marketing where they just take, because dumb fucks take this stuff for granted with no actual understanding of the actual political implications of this, which is that there's no oversight and no, you know, the only fucking oversight to any of this is, oh, well, why don't you read our terms of service, which we can change at any time? Yeah, fucking good story. Same thing with capitalism. Oh, yeah, you know, like, I kind of got an objection to this thing that you keep saying is perfect. I think you might be a little naive that people aren't going to use this thing. It's not benign. It's not, we have to get away from this idea that this process is neutral and fair, and it isn't. And it actually, you know, we have to have a conversation about it. And this is the problem with the industry in general, is that marketers just go off and go, oh yeah, fuck it, whatever. I'm just going to, you know, A/B test, A/B test, A/B test, A/B test, build these personas and, you know, test. You know, just so that you can spend as little as possible and get as much as possible back. Meanwhile, frying the fucking heads of everybody because nobody's receiving, you know, again, it's just one of those things. So the first thing, and this is part of the reason why we have to just discuss this process and have a conversation. I don't know what the solution is, other than sort of, you know, people who know, I don't know what the solution is. I think dealing with dark patterns is one, but again, no one's going to do that. So the first thing that you want to do is think about roughly what model you want to use, right? So let's have a look at this. So this is the organizer's handbook approach, which is that snowflake model. I've talked about this before, where for each of these people, right, they've all kind of there and there. So this expands out infinitely like a snowflake. This is called the snowflake model. This is what you use in, and I've used this model in particular because it is used politically to organize as well as in marketing. But what you want to do is think about who influences who and sort of look at the networks, okay? So this is kind of a core principle of like influencer marketing. So if someone is approaching like a low-level influencer, it's like that. It's because they want to sell product to that person, okay? I'm not going to state the obvious too much to everyone. I can go into this in detail, but I really don't want to go into too much detail. I just want to show you that it can be done pretty easily. Like, you can give me any bad product and I can think about how you get to people. If once you've done a handful of exercises, right, it's easy. So let's say you've got your spontaneous combustion kits for babies, okay? And you're going to sell them to the men because the men will want those. So what are the men? Okay, so let's say, all right, you're going to sell them to men and women, okay. Or we're just going to sell them to the men. We only need 10. Women are more likely to object. Maybe we park the women for later. So you got to think this stuff through. Okay. So again, you just got to know, once you have enough experience, this is why these bros on Twitter are like, why don't you make an argument? I went, no, my experience is my argument. Go fuck yourself. I can make a statement that women are more likely to object to fucking spontaneous combustion kits to babies because I know that. That's it. Fucking knock it off. I'm not going to get 8 research papers. Say that. So anyway, so let's think about, let's just simplify it, but assume that, okay, so when you start at a campaign, what you would do is you'd usually have maybe, if it's not extraordinarily complex, like at the enterprise level, there would already be probably like 100 of these built. Okay, so 100 of these that are connected to that have that many people around them, and already. So they've already sort of planned out this snowflake model, right? That's a network map. It's just a network of whatever. Okay. If you ever wanted to feel like a fucking data point, this is how you fucking feel like a data point. But what you would do, so you sort of, I want you to keep this model in mind the whole time, because this obviously, when you're targeting one person, assume they've got like, you know, a network of influence around them. It doesn't have to be, you know, like thousands and thousands of people. If they've got millions, that's a bonus. But the problem is you don't want to get caught. So going with the millions approach for 10 sales is probably not, and you know, wanting to nudge people in the long term is probably not your best strategy. So actually you'd be better off not doing that. Okay. And what you would do is actually identify probably, you know, this is how you would go with something a bit more targeted with a longer term thing. But you got to understand this model first. Okay. Which is that everyone influences someone else. And they often, and it's exponential. So that is, you know, this expands and expands and expands. 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon. Okay. 6 degrees from buying spontaneous combustion kits for babies. All right, so let's say we're going to go for, let's call this guy Ian, because Ian's a fuckwit, okay? That one's for the true fans. Now what you would do, Ian's not, okay, let's go with Sarah, okay? Because I just grabbed these templates. These aren't my templates. I'm not sharing my shit because it's all NDA. I can't share any of my stuff. So let's say, okay, so what you do is you go, okay, so for every single person that you want to influence, persuade, or sell to, so now remember, think about this. So this person may not buy, okay? This person here may not buy. Oh, sorry, that's Ian. So Ian's a fuckwit. Ian's going to buy the, like, spontaneous combustion kit for babies, okay? Sally might not buy it, but Sally might actually make it so that this person buys it, okay? Colin, also a fuckwit, okay, might actually know Ian and provide Ian with reassurance that he should be, you know, buying it. So once you understand how these sort of relationships all work together and how they can be cynically exploited, okay, now, you know, this might be Colin's wife, you know, and Colin's boyfriend, and, you know, all that stuff. So there's all these relationships. So don't just look at them as nodes. Look at them as sort of relationships that may be crossed. We may not be aware of all of them, but a lot of what the data analysis and those BI tools do is map those relationships without our consent, first of all, consent, and also without, you know, it can be used extraordinarily cynically. And I'll show you how. So, but you also might see that it's not so much Ian that buys the spontaneous combustion kit for babies, but, you know, Susan over here, Carol over here, and fucking, you know, the guy over here who's got no friends, who's just been online and, like, you know, already made up his mind, and he just needs to see the ad and needs a little push, okay? He doesn't even need a push. He was just already planning to buy the spontaneous combustion kit for babies because he's a fucking psychopath. You know, that's already 6 sales, whatever it was. So you need to understand that that's sort of roughly, it expands and stuff. So I'm going to show you on the micro scale when you look trying to reach one person, okay, what you would do. So it's called a persona. And what you would do is you'd build this out, okay. Now this is a standard persona. This isn't even a complicated one, okay. Now I'll show you quickly. There's a few different ways. Now this is user experience work. This is what I do. I don't make logos, okay. This is what I actually do for a living. Well, did for a living before I fucking decided I couldn't do it anymore. But there's like, so what you call it's basically mapping. Okay, so user mapping, or there's lots of different words for it. But these are the sort of the 4 pillars, the 4 main tools. There's loads and loads of different ones. I tend to use a more proprietary one that doesn't, and it doesn't sort of exploit lizard brain shit. But you can do so that you've got the first one you've got this here is the empathy map. Okay. You've got a customer journey map, which is more where, let's say it's not a long-term, it's more of a nudging situation. So in the case of spontaneous combustion kits for babies, people aren't going to be at buy it straight away. Okay, so they're not going to be all except for this fucking psycho over here, okay, that had already made his mind up about that. He's handled. We just got to find him and target him. That's no problem. But the others are a bit more sophisticated, because what we want to do is they might not be ready quite there, but they might be 60% of the way. And so these customer journey maps is they try to map out or second guess what points get them there. So it's like what touch points. Okay, that's called a touch point. And what they do is, so from here, so at what point do you get their interest? At what point, do they start looking and browsing and, considering options and all that stuff? And at what point will you sort of enter and exit in order to fuck them? Like go in and out of their day and in and out of their life. It could be even in and out of their year. In the case of this sort of, this political stuff, it can take years. It takes a couple of years of work. It's very elaborate and very and long term. But they've gone, okay, so what do you do from, so let's say spontaneous combustion kit for babies. You're not there. So where are you at? Where do you go? So what does your day look like? What does your week look like? What is your, what pushes you towards, that direction? So what you would do is go, okay, so where do they first find out that spontaneous combustion kits for babies are a thing? At what point do you introduce that? Now, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to introduce that. What mindset are they in? So would you go, all right, so you probably would not want to introduce them to the idea before they're already predisposed to other ideas, because they're more likely to report you, block you, disengage, and you get caught, and you can't get caught. Okay. So what you would do is, I would probably use more of a customer journey map, or, there's a number, I don't know, you can use them for different things. You actually use most of them like differently and interchangeably, and there's hundreds of different ones. But basically it goes, okay, so specific user and scenario and goals. Okay, so how do we get this user, okay, in this scenario so that, they do what we want? And that will be in phases. So let's say in the spontaneous combustion kit for babies thing, you would get people when they're already thinking maybe about exploding babies. I already regret. I should go with something a bit more fucking benign. No, but you want to get people when they're sort of but you can't. So this is where in sales, you can sell somebody something they don't want to buy, so long as you are selling something else and you nudge them and that's called priming, right? I'm sure you understand what priming is. So it's like, that's what cults do, is that, they don't tell you about fucking Xenu on the first day. Okay, they don't tell you about, Amway and those fucking things. Or like Thermomix. Go to a Thermomix party and they're like, look at this amazing thing and this amazing. And you're like, yeah, that's amazing. I like this. It's amazing. And they go, $2,500. Thanks. You go, fuck off. That's a blender. That. Okay. It's like there's a time to ask when it's going to, so that's what nudges are. They're sort of priming you along the way, sort of softening you up, getting you to a place where, you're more malleable and more suggestible. Okay. I love that. I always, those Tupperware, those MLM parties, this is why this is an MLM thing. It's just how it works. But that priming. So the customer journey map. See, I think this is where you need to know where it's not accidental. And a lot of this stuff is engineered. And once you see how this interplays with like big with data and insights and that sort of stuff, you'll start to see how there's no way that this Joe Rogan shit is organic, for a start. And second of all, that you can sell anything to anyone and get around any rule so long as no one gives a fuck and no one pays attention and people just keep getting caught up in these scams. Okay. So the customer journey map, so they'd be in phases. So they might be at that sort of browsing phase, or they might be just curious at this point. Okay. So that's where you wouldn't hit them with the sell. You wouldn't say, all right, well, yeah. So anyway, we'll move on from that. So phase 2, they might be a little bit more like might have some pushback and opposition to the whole idea even. of like selling these, of buying this thing. But eventually they might get to a place where they're ready to buy. Now, there can be like, in the case of politics, okay, if you're doing like severe nudging and if you're doing actual like serious UX work, and they are, okay, there's probably easily probably 100, maybe 50 phases, depending, maybe even more. Some of the experience maps can get incredibly complicated, okay? But they're not, you know, they can be really simple, like how do I get my toddler to eat their broccoli? I'm seeing some synergy here with my product. Dickhead. Okay. Threaten to blow them up. That might be a good one. But, you know, so, but how do I get someone from A to B? But, you know, usually what someone's doing is going, okay, so phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 to phase 4 to phase 5, and they're mapping that stuff out. Now, again, you can see how getting someone to buy your lipstick, okay, perfectly cool, okay? Getting someone to fucking like storm the Capitol, not so great, okay? Getting someone to cancel a fucking podcaster for God knows what fucking reason so you could like drop the share price, well, you know, that's easy too. Getting people to buy toilet paper and panic, again, is once you're doing this behavioral design stuff, it's they're right in the fact that it is agnostic, in the fact that this model is not implicitly evil or implicitly fucking unethical, or it's how you use it. Problem is that everyone's using it without thinking about the ethics. There's no real built-in ethics here, okay? So you got the empathy map. So the empathy map, you sit down and you write, okay, so what this user, one user, all right, what's Sarah saying? What words are coming out of her mouth? What's she saying? And in this could be applied to, you know, tweeting, okay? It could be what she's thinking, what she's writing. That's where you've helped them to build this shit. This is where data comes in. You've helped them to build this stuff, and you haven't even, they don't need to do interviews anymore because they have more data on you than anything you'd ever tell them, okay? Thinks, okay, well, what's she thinking? What's she likely? What's our target user audience, okay? At this point, you're not targeting a specific person, okay? At this point, you're targeting a sort of an archetype or a caricature of your ideal customer. So what does your ideal customer think, okay? What do they feel and what do they do, okay? And that could be down to they drink a cup of coffee. They do, like, the more granular you get, the better, okay? And that at every stage, you start to do this empathy map and they work together. So at this point in phase 1, where are they? What are they doing? What are they thinking? You know, where are they at? What can you do to meet them where they're at? Okay. This is that constant, that loop. And then you design messaging and advertising and, you know, all of that stuff around that. An experience map is a much more sort of complex version of that. It's sort of similar, but it's more just around like the user, getting to know the user. It's more long-term. You know, and the service blueprint includes the experience of the person who is trying to sell. So if you're in a public service situation, it incorporates the experience of the people that they're interacting with, the representatives of the business, or how they're interacting with the service. It just sort of shows that part of it and molds those two together. So that's more service design, but there's lots of different ones. That's way boring. So here's an example of an empathy map. Okay, so, you know, buying a TV. Okay. Now, this is a benign thing. You could say, all right, well, because it's actually, I'll talk about this. So you want to do this work up front first. I would actually insert something else first, because I would do brainstorming first. Some people would do it second. I would do a first brainstorm, then this, and then like consolidate some of the strategy stuff. So I tend to do things in a different way that's a bit counter to sort of best practice, but that's just because I find that gut instinct, gut feel brainstorming tends to be a good starting place, and it helps to provide focus and direction for my fucking brain. So anyway, I was expecting, so just write down, says, what words do they say? Okay. So where this would actually apply in advertising, right? So where this would actually apply in somewhere like advertising is that if you start to write an empathy map, okay, and you write all of the words that they're saying, and you write the words that they're thinking, and you think about how they're feeling, it's not just about like evil shit. What it does is it's actually just a really good tool for, and this is how it was supposed to be used and how people mostly use it and how I use it, is that you learn to communicate with the potential customer. So you go, okay, what words are they saying? Okay, and you write it in the way they speak and the words they use. This is why I do what I do on fucking Twitter, and I swear on here, because I know that people, generally, like certain worlds don't want to listen to boring shit. But it's like, okay, so but you write it in the words that they would use, the language that they would use. Okay, you do what they're thinking. So what they're because some people, obviously there's a disconnect between what they're thinking and what they're feeling as well. They might actually be thinking that they're mad at this thing, but they might be feeling frustrated. They might be and obviously this is where the deeper you go and the more the more work you do in deeply trying to understand the psychology of people, you can see how that's dangerous and a weapon, but also why, I'm quite comfortable in psych, because I go, well, I've spent my career doing this kind of work around user work, which is I go, okay, what are they saying? What are they thinking? What are they doing? So so they might be angry and they might be yelling and having a tantrum, and you write that down. So in customer service, might have an angry customer that's acting a certain way, but you can actually map it out. And what this does is it helps you to build the product off the back of this. So the solution. So if this was an ad campaign, say online, Laura's here, hello. But if you're doing this work up front, it's really, really good for creative, because you kind of really know, what sort of where they are. And it also gives you some brainstorming for the creative later on. Like the creative is almost, if you're using human-centered design appropriately, which is what it's called, if you're doing this process appropriately, and in this right order, the creative is actually almost secondary. Okay. The problem is now it's just become sort of assembly work, which is that's where it becomes like, it's a bit naff. That's why you're not seeing any real great creative anymore, because it's become sort of too science and not enough art. But, the good agencies are still doing great stuff. But anyway, just so you need to know, like, this exercise is really beneficial. This is, even if you have anything with an audience. So if you're writing a paper, think about this. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? Now, the thinking part is good, as is the feelings. Now, in sales, so this is beneficial in sales as well, because a big part of what a lot of this, the culture wars stuff has something called objection handling in it. Okay, this is how I know, because I know a well-run campaign. I can spot it because I know what a sloppy campaign and poorly executed campaign looks like, and what a well-executed one looks like. And they're mostly well-executed. And I go, okay, well, that means it's got money and resources and expertise. This isn't quite a specific area of expertise. But what you can't stumble on this shit. This is a process. It's a discipline in its own right that no one appreciates. It runs the world, but no one gives a shit. But like some of this stuff also will tease out any objections. So if you're doing if you've done sales training at all or anything to do with sales, you'll know that they teach you to preempt, like with sales scripts and stuff. If you've ever worked in a fucking telemarketing even, and you're given the script, what those are is that there's all these objections built in, like objection handling and that sort of stuff. So, and a lot of that stuff is built on knowing what that person is likely to say or respond or feel or think in response to being contacted or exposed to your messaging, product, idea, all that sort of stuff. And that's what I've noticed the right do really well. And that's how I know it's not fucking. That's how, again, I know how these things aren't organic, because they've already got talking points and they've already got answers for every objection. There's nobody who doesn't know. They've always got a response. And usually if it's a well-formed response, that means that there's a sales script behind it, generally. And it means they've done this work. And it's like, think about an iceberg, like where, so if you're a surgeon or a doctor and someone's got yellow eyes, it's like, well, I'm not going to sit there and prove that they got yellow eyes. I'm going to say, look, I can tell their fucking liver's failing and shit. I just know, because it's like, it's just judgment, right? So, and think of an iceberg where it's like, this is what you see. And then what's all underneath that. And if you see that, then this is what it takes to execute. And this is the part where I'm frustrated because people don't understand that behind the ads that I share, I know what it takes to fucking get an ad like that done and designed and planned and where it comes from and how it's like. So that's where I'm just frustrated. I think that people just don't value this job. Okay. Or this vocation. And fucking recruiters don't even know what it is. Jesus Christ. Not fucking logos and it's not coding. Even though I can do both of those things, it's not. This is what it is. Okay. So that's an empathy map. Now, and again, these aren't set in stone. These are just like the common toolkits. Like any model, you can use it as, there's hundreds of potential things. You can just use like, post-it notes, whatever you want to do. I tend to build my own exercises over time, but this is like the bog standard stuff. Customer journey map. So here you go. So you build a scenario. So Jamie needs to switch her current mobile plan. She wants a plan that can save her money without having to sacrifice usage limits. Okay. Expectations. Clear online information, ability to compare plan breakdowns, friendly and helpful customer support. Now that's kind of boring, but if you've done this first, you already know quite a bit about Jamie, so you can flesh this out. Okay. Most people aren't very good at this work. I actually should point that out. Most people aren't very good at the empathy exercises. It's what I used to specialize in until I realized that it was not fucking a good idea. Also, that was one thing I'll talk about that in a minute. All right. So experience mapping. This one's a bit more complicated. So experience map, for example, pregnancy. That's a good example. So, but look, see, anxiety levels, common tests. So positive pregnancy tests, urine analysis, they've got, specific phases, specific pain points, what they're sharing, who they're sharing it with, what they might be planning, where their head is at. Again, this works in conjunction with other things. There's so many different ways to do this. I'm just skimming over. I'm just showing you that this is what happens, but this is what's being done. And if you think it's not being done to you, you're fucking naive. This is why when he's like, oh, why is it an organic activist? Okay, yeah, sure. Define organic. Go on then, fuckwit. Oh, sorry, I forgot. You're a man with a philosophy podcast. You know way better than me. Anyway, so, and then this is the more complicated sort of service blueprint. That one's more like, that's more for sort of agencies and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's a rough example. So what you would do, where are we? So the first thing you would do is build those diagrams out as much as possible. Okay. Then you would build it into what looks like a persona. Okay. Now, again, this can have any number of things in it. This is just, I used to incorporate a lot more psych shit. Okay. A lot more painful shit. And that's what they're, kind of doing a lot more now. A lot of marketers keep it light. And first of all, also in the defense of corporate marketing, most of them don't have fucking brains, first of all. And second of all, they don't have the time or budget and never prioritize proper UX work. What they will do is usually just do a superficial fucking thing. Now, what I used to do, this was with data. Okay. This is what data changed, which was that this used to be mostly, so if we look at something like this, okay, experience map, okay. What you would do with, let's say, a customer journey map. So what you would do, this would actually be more of a hypothesis that you can then measure and test. You would do sort of user interviews, so you could actually interview, but a lot of it was kind of guess, especially with persona. Okay, the empathy exercises is to get the designer thinking about the user, but they didn't have any real data. Now we had some, obviously, and you also, when you're doing those exercises, obviously when you're doing a persona, the way that we work with heuristics is that we will, obviously picture someone we know. Like one of the things that used to happen in a workshop a lot was like, don't use the name of the person you know. Call them something different, you fucking idiot. But they're usually thinking of X customer that they know or X person. They're usually thinking of a person. But this is meant to be an artificial made up person. Hypothetical. Okay. So Sarah student. And so it's like her main quote, a day in the life of Sarah. So just sort of, all that stuff. Her background, some demographics. So that's called demographic information. finances, her online behaviors, so what she uses, what she's looking for. Okay. Now, there's a reason why I'm going through this, because I'm going to tell you like how this is now sort of on steroids. So what influences her? Her brand affinities. Okay. Now, again, this is something where we'd have to use our imaginations to build. Okay. That would be someone who would, it was actually, ironically, it was actually an empathy exercise for the designer, who would go, okay, this is what I think. Okay. Hopes and dreams, become a reputable interior designer. You know, this was, you know, travel the world, you know, all that sort of worries and fears. Okay. What would make her life easier? Now, this is the thing that they focus on. Again, this is like, you know, these are all pain points. They're called pain points. But, you know, the things that make her life easier. So, you know, funky atmosphere, deals and coupons, you know, provide a job board. Now, if you do the persona in conjunction with the other stuff that I talked about, but also what you do is then if you introduce, let's say Sarah has a Twitter account. Okay, Sarah has a Facebook account, and Sarah has been blogging and has a really large digital footprint and quite a lot of data. Okay. Now, because Sarah is an anonymous person, what Sarah is now an aggregate. So that's called aggregate data. So what they'll do is they pull in an average person or the mean, or, you know, variations of that. Okay. To build up these personas, but they use data to do it. So they don't use their imagination and they don't empathize. Which was the whole fucking point, dickheads, of design, is to empathize. So instead, you got these spreadsheet fucks. That's why I call them the data cult. But they got these spreadsheet fucks who forget the fucking reason why we had these things in the first place. And they pull data. Okay, so they use insights tools. They use all those sorts of things. Okay, so they build up a persona based on what they, so they've already got, so if you've, let's say you are, so you're building the, you know, the spontaneous combustion for babies product, but like I said before, you already have another mainstream product. Okay, you've sold a few products before, you have a rough understanding of those audiences, okay, or who your audience is. You've already got a database, you've already got data on them. Okay, so the first thing you've got is existing data, okay, and that's someone, and that's what an email list is. So you can use that, okay. You can look at your list and see who on that list meets, you know, the persona. But also then you can use the insights tools, which I'll share the screen and show you what those are, to sort of, you know, figure out what people are talking about and all those things. Now, the enterprise grade tools are extremely expensive, but they're very sophisticated. I think you'd be quite amazed at what's possible with these things. Okay. And this is where it's deeply worrying, but also just, you know, like I said, you could sell anything to anyone with enough money and time. Okay. And no scruples. So anyway, so let's say, Sarah might object. I mean, this is a coffee shop persona, but let's like this Sarah student, she probably looks like someone who might object. Okay, but what we're looking for, but what we've got is her data. So the thing that we've got now, and the thing that we know now, is that Sarah also likes to visit, she's a member of certain Facebook groups, like causes, environmentalism, for example. Okay, she's thinking, she's on Tinder. Okay, she's looking for a husband. She says one thing, like if you ask her, she says these things, but if you ask her, she means something else. Okay, so if you actually, on the surface, you go, okay, well, Sarah, this is what happens when you scratch beyond the surface with this stuff, which is what Sarah's feeling and what she's thinking and saying is different to what actually says is in the data. And the data crosses a sort of a barrier in terms of privacy with, you know, like the data knows stuff about Sarah that Sarah doesn't necessarily want anyone to know. Okay, so there's that. So the one thing that the big data bases in the sky know is that Sarah actually has 3 Twitter accounts. Not one, but she's got 3. Okay. And through, again, the consumer grade tools can't show this, but the enterprise grade ones can, and Twitter and Facebook most certainly can, and the feds most certainly can. Okay. Political interests most certainly can access this stuff. Okay. Now, so Sarah says her hopes and dreams are to become a reputable interior designer. That's a bit superficial, isn't it? I don't know of anyone who's got that fucking hope and dream. I think most people's hopes and dreams are other things. You know, like, again, this is where marketers are fucking stupid and they don't realize that people lie, right? But this is where you introduce something like data and insights, and you start to build a more dangerous and dark and manipulative persona that uses the same kind of principles. So what you do is you build a persona. Step one. Now, you go, all right, well, Sarah likes the environment. She's generally anti-baby. She doesn't want to have kids. Okay. No, I don't know, does she? No, she does. Sarah does want to have kids. She hasn't really thought about it. One of those things she hasn't really thought about. So it's fun, actually, to like doing these exercises. Now, Sarah says she wants these things, but really her search data and her alternate Twitter account tells a different story. Sarah's actually quite depressed. And she's had like quite a few relationships or hookups on Tinder that haven't gone well. And you know, she's not in a good place. She's really worried about, like, she's been taking in a lot of this sort of, you know, this global warming stuff, you know, environmental stuff, and she's just really worried about the future. Okay, and the pandemic has sort of tipped her over the edge a little bit. She's, you know, like all of us, she's kind of just lost her mind a little bit to the point where, you know, some of us consider a product called, what was it? I keep forgetting. Spontaneous combustion kits for babies. And others are sort of consuming all this stuff. And she's just, you know, she's just generally anxious. But because Sarah's been putting on this sort of persona, no one's really worried about Sarah. No, she's just kind of got this, you know, most of us are like this. We put on personas and we pretend that we're okay. But the data tells us otherwise, which is that Sarah's not okay, and Sarah's actually quite vulnerable. Okay. So she's got these worries, and these are the worries that she talks about. But she's, you know, again, these are normal fears. But the deep, dark fears show in her data. Now, again, it's not personal. What I'm saying is most of this is usually in the aggregate, okay? For your average marketer, they can't obviously access that specific information on you in the first instance. I want to qualify that, in the first instance. As soon as you click on their shit, they know everything about you specifically. That's the thing. Don't click on things. Fucking anyway. So, you know, she's got these things. Anyway, so having an idea of what Sarah is and what Sarah does and what her pain points might be. This is a shitty persona. Mine would be a lot more fucking dark if I was going to do this. I'd actually sit down and go, well, Sarah's scared that the world's going to end. Okay, Sarah's fucking freaking out. Sarah's got this alternative Twitter account that no one knows about that's really all doom and gloom. She hangs out on Reddit and she's fucking on all of these things. And, you know, Sarah's quietly being radicalized, you know, but she's putting on this sort of, you know, front that everything's cool because that's what's expected of her, and it's also, you know, partly her job. Okay. So anyway, so let's just move on. I've hammered that fucking horse. All right, so how many Sarahs are there out there? This is a tool called BuzzSumo. This is one of many. Okay. So what you can do is you go, all right, so how many Sarahs are there, I wonder? Oh, actually, no, wrong search. So let's go, what should we do? Let's find Twitter first. Let's go with Twitter. Tweeting articles about. Climate change fear. It's all Joe Rogan there. That's what I was doing. I'm starting to look at all this shit. So these are the tools we'll use. Okay, so we'll use these sorts of tools. All right. This is how I also know what, you know, where the bots are and how things are a bot campaign, because I can see who's sharing what where, right? So Again, this is a lot of manual work. A lot of the big enterprise grade tools will automate this shit. And if you've got AI and you've got API access, obviously you can build tools that like do this, or for you. I do it manually. It's a lot of work, and it's like, these tools are quite expensive. I've just used the trials and changed the email address because it's not worth it. But anyway, so where are we? So you scroll through, so you can actually look at these people. Okay, so you can sort by Twitter followers. Let's keep it easy and let's assume that a lot of followers is a lot of influence, and leave it there, and it's a straightforward campaign. Speaking of fucking, anyway, so let's move away. It's going to be the big guys. So let's go down. No, hang on. Let's go mid-level. So search by average retweets might be a better way to look at it. It'll filter out the So anyway, so you can just go through and you look at who all of the influential. Again, you just need to know that you can actually just share who's influential in what, right? And who's sharing what, who shared what. Okay. And all right, so who's all right, climate change. Hang on. Here's a better one. I think you see where I'm going here. Okay, so what you do is you just start to do a search. So, oh, sorry, I missed a step. So the next thing that you would do is start to do some sort of map based on that persona, which would be, okay, what topics can I use to pique their interest? So once you've done this map and you meet people sort of where they're at, in order to nudge them into, this, the kit. Obviously, you can't just sell them that up front. What you could do is start to nudge them in a position where they feel like they would buy that thing, or get them so politically motivated or radicalized so that they somehow rationalize buying this terrible product. Okay, and this is what you've seen happen over and over again. Okay, so my light just hang on. That's what happened. It fell off. One sec. That time of day. Fucking stupid thing. All right. So Twitter followers. Yeah, so you can, again, some of this is manual. Normally you'd use something a bit more like robust if you were doing something. If you're doing something sneaky, you'd use something a bit more robust. But I'm just showing you these are like accessible tools, right? But you just sort of, browse these things, right? Here we go. Shared overpopulation and eco-fascism. A solution to climate change or just another fad? Here we go. So this is where you want to go. So then you check out this account. And you go, all right. Okay. That's funny. Hang on. Where are we? That's funny. Okay. Looks like someone tried to explode some babies. That's pretty funny. All right, so that's actually pretty funny. So you just try to see and go, all right, what are these people? What are they kind of sharing? All right, what's this one? Spec the weasel. Oh, here we go. See, look, this is really. See, what's funny is you actually start to go, oh, okay. Because again, the tech platforms are across this stuff too. They'll ban you based on a lot of these signals, right? Let's see if we can find an actual active account. Anyway, I think you get get my drift. So what we would do, this is actually quite a manual exercise. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. I'm getting too distracted. But So what you would do is you'd search for Twitter accounts that may have, roughly, and you've got to do your research. You build a database. Normally, if you're starting from like somewhere, like you've already got an established database, obviously you'd already have something to work on. And what you would also do then is create like lookalike audiences, like with, Facebook, YouTube. You'd look at who the influencers are, okay? But you also start to build a list on who's talking about certain things, okay? But also what you can do is using Facebook, okay? Oh, I haven't done that yet. But what you can also start to do is monitor trending topics. You don't have to, it's not just A to B. Okay. So what it is you're not going to just go, oh yeah, hey, would you like to sell like this? Would you like to buy an exploding babies kit? Okay. You don't do that. That's stupid. What you would do is go, okay, well, how can I nudge people using the news of the day, using a combination of different touch points? Like if you've done this experience map, you know what you can do. You can reach people every point that they're at. That's why you'll see, a combination of like troll farms, bots, like likes and retweets. You'll see media. You'll see when you're actually trying to run quite a sophisticated and elaborate campaign, it's very easy to just create all these things. Okay, and again, it's just a matter of time, money, and well, know-how and willingness. Okay, that's really all it is. It's not difficult. So okay, so let's see. We go, oh yeah, all right. What kind of stuff is trending that's sort of roughly related to some of these things that we've mapped out and brainstormed? They're not directly related. Okay, so you might go, all right, well, who might want to make babies self-implode? Who might want to make babies explode? Well, okay, terrorists. Okay, we don't want to do that. That's Fed shit. Okay, let's not do that. What about depressed mothers? Maybe. Again, we don't have any scruples. Environmentalists who like really believe this like overpopulation thing. Anti-abortion people who are like super pro-abortion but don't have access. So again, you have fun brainstorming. It's gotten dark. You get what I'm saying. Like you do a brainstorming thing and you go, okay, so what other groups, what related topics and clusters would you do? Okay. And then what you do is you start to build out a strategy based on sort of what's popular, what's trending, what tends to trend, okay, the pain points of people based on their profile and their data, okay. And the thing is that once you've got a CRM, which is a customer relationship management, which is basically like a database, okay. So the database sits at the center. I'm working on IP on this. I'm not going to go into any more detail because I've already like waffled way too long for this, but I'm just saying like it's easy to do. But if you've got a CRM set up, it doesn't matter if Facebook won't gather the data, okay? Or because you're pulling the data from Facebook into your CRM, okay? Doesn't matter if hang on, I lost my train of thought. CRM. Oh yeah. So basically it's mostly anonymized. Okay. So with Google, okay, the insights data that you've got is just for research and aggregate. Okay. So it's sort of on average. Okay. But once you click on a website and it's got the pixel and it's got, analytics or any kind of script, and you perform some sort of action that lands you in a customer relationship management tool. Now, not necessarily having visited the website. Sometimes it depends, okay? Depends on how you've set up your Facebook app. This is where Cambridge Analytica did that like horrible shit where they just pulled all the data. Facebook have been a bit more strict now. But so when you go to a website and you click and you fill out a form and you accept, okay, or you submit anything, what that does is it pulls your Facebook information, anything that you've given from Facebook, your Google cookie information, your operating system, that. And then what that will do is go into it's called a social CRM, okay? Usually they've got all these sort of tools, okay? And then, so that aggregate data that you use to research, you click on it, and then what happens is, it's not, and then they fill out the form in the website, and that goes, that's that person, that person, that's matched to that account, that's matched to that, and that those social CRMs exist over here as a separate product. They then cross-reference everything in their big data set. So they'll go your Twitter account, your LinkedIn account, how many friends you've got, what your habits are, what your reputation is, what you tend to talk about, what your interests are. So basically what these content CRMs, the goal has been is to make sure that they build basically a fucking burn book on everybody. And the only thing standing between you and that is people saying we won't do that. There's no real laws around it. It's like, privacy policy, yeah, okay. Now, being simplistic, but I think that's where people don't realize how easily this stuff is manipulated. So anyway, this is fucking weird, isn't it? The Jimmy Carr thing. I saw the special at Christmas. It was fucking fine. Jesus Christ, Holocaust joke. It was a joke about the gypsies. It was funny. And the only reason that they don't like the joke is because it acknowledges that fucking lots more people died. Anyway. So look, where are we? So let's go to science. Let's have a look. What's the topic on science? So it's about being creative. A lot of this stuff is very fun. So here we go. Cut meat and dairy output by a third to save climate. British farmers told. So you go, oh, that's interesting. What can I do? So maybe what I could do is set up some like this, because the influencers won't touch something like that. But what I can do is maybe get them on board with a related kind of issue and a separate sub-campaign, okay, which would be a little nudgy campaign that gets people into our email list, okay? So what we would do is get, because environment influencers are a lot more, and you can sell something, fairly benign, share articles from The Guardian, all legit, right? No one's asking you to buy was it whatever we're selling. No one's asking you to sell that part, right? But you're just sharing an article and saying, yeah, we really need to make action on this thing. Okay, we really need to do this. But what you're doing is you're paying someone to promote messaging. Okay, so what you're trying to do is, this is where the PR aspect comes in. Public relations, which is where you try to get articles written that aren't the big ask, but they are, somewhat related. And what you're trying to do is pull you in so that you sign up and you like their shit, and that, so they can get you sort of get you captive, so they can actually target you more meaningfully, right? And this is what I'm trying to explain badly. It's quite complicated. So you just go through and you do all of these things. So you search articles, you do whatever you need to do. What do we got here? So you just go through, you go, where are the opportunities here? And you start mapping this out. Now, if you're nimble and you've got a social media manager whose job it is to just do this all day, every day, you could actually silo this. Okay, you could actually silo this and say, okay, I want you to run X social media account, right? But they're just sharing, as far as they know, they're just sharing articles on the environment and cutting out meat and dairy, and how overpopulation is, a big problem, and, all that sort of stuff, and just general environment shit. This is where you could actually create some sort of bullshit organization if you were really invested in this, and, create a charity that says, we're all for population control and saving the children. And then you have a website that, just captures that stuff, and it's like, sign the petition today to support the, birth control in Africa, or some shit that stops, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then what that does is it takes you out off Facebook, and it targets you and all. Anyway, so I'm getting all things mixed up. So, you go through, you're always looking at the opportunities, right? So it's not always a direct relationship. And this is where I think people kind of keep pushing back on me, where I go, this isn't organic. I can tell. It's because I can tell when people are being nudged in various directions. Now, the other thing is that you also can't tell, because people are so radicalized, what they're doing voluntarily and what they're fucking paid to do. But that's another aspect. But see how it's pretty easy. So you just get people interested, and you kind of nudge the conversation in the direction that you want. So what you would do is if you wanted to sell, spontaneous combustion kits for babies, you would start the conversation with influencers on the environment. And what you would do is the same thing with hang on. So let's go with so here's another thing. So with Twitter, here we go. So what you could do is use the research tools. I'm going to just move on from the tools because I get distracted looking at the things. It's too interesting. But what you could do is also then approach, you could just start to interact. So you create a bunch of sock accounts and you start interacting with influencers in that space and start directing their conversations. And so what you would do is just sort of, set up a few Twitter accounts and create these personas and start just tweeting articles, acting as if you were just an ordinary person interested in the environment. But eventually, you'll see this happening with Glenn Greenwald's account and those sorts of accounts quite a bit, where there's people reply, the troll farms are obviously replying to get him to fucking fall for like some sort of like bullshit, or push him and nudge him in a certain direction. That's pretty clear what's happening there. But and that's where you'll see those conversation bots with COVID. The anti-vax bots are really interesting because they're just trying to nudge influencers to change their minds, and And also what they do is they also don't forget that large portions of this is also performative. So as long as you could get a handful of influencers, a handful of Twitter accounts, and have those like Twitter accounts like replying to journalists, building those relationships. And again, you just take a year, take 6 months to do it. You build those relationships. Over time, you're just tweeting about the environment, and then eventually you just go, okay, overpopulation. Let's talk about it. Okay. And what you do is you gradually, through that list, you start to sort of purge and exclude people. So again, that's that role of sort of A/B testing. So you go, okay, so these people are interested in this people are interested in this person is this person is this person does this person thinks this, based on that. And then you strike when you actually can strike with a fairly high degree of certainty that they're going to say yes or not object, then you hit them with the ask, which is, hey, would you like to buy this fucking, Or you could introduce one as the other thing that you could do. I'm brainstorming this on the spot because I only thought of it just before the stream. That was the idea. Is that what I would do is maybe create some sort of postpartum depression meme page, like dark memes for postpartum depression. And you create a community around snarky mums because that's a big thing, right? And then eventually you just sort of nudge the community, and then you just try your luck and have a fucking. Then what you do is you would actually have a meme that's like obviously a joke, but it's not a joke because it's a product. Test the reaction and see who's upset, who's not, who laughs, who thinks it's funny, who says, wish I had one of those. And then you fucking see, you know what I mean? There's all these ways of just constantly testing and nudging so long as you know who you're trying to reach. And that's the thing, is that you're going through this process. It's just user experience design. And again, if you have the money, the resources, and you just fucking, and a credit card, you can do all of these things. Thankfully, I won't take money for this type of shit. So it's just, one of those things. But I think people just need to understand how this also has impacts in terms of something like, say, the Joe Rogan thing, the cancellation of Joe Rogan, which is not organic at all. When you see the ads, you go to the Facebook ad library and you just go, oh yeah, they're running a campaign. 76 ads in the last 4 days, all A/B tested, all small amounts. It's what they're doing. They're just nudging people over and over again onto their website so that they can get on a list for the midterms. It's all just fucking performative shit. But what they do is they also, like, again, you can just, segment people. So you got your true believers, you've got people who aren't quite there, people who can be persuaded. This is where segmenting, you can just keep segmenting people with these databases. And this is not, again, what's the GDPR going to do? Unless they audit you, then, there's not really much you can do. And really, to get around the GDPR, all you need to do is have front group that just, so basically it's like, well, you just have a front group that silo it and only keeps certain data, and has social media managers doing environmental shit, one org doing postpartum shit, one org doing, save the children, one org doing fucking, eco, like, activism shit, scooping everyone up into a big fucking database, and then A/B testing them and refining and refining and refining. And then eventually you go, hey, you want to buy this fucking, what is it? That thing? Spontaneous combustion kit for babies. You see how it's not really that difficult. And I know that I could actually, if there was a course, I could probably just go through step by step. There's a lot of stuff here, and there's a lot of variables, but that's the basic process, which is, as long as you know in detail what your goal is, what you're selling, who's going to buy it, and what your budget is, and who you're trying to reach, you can find them. And then once you find them, and if they click, you can build a burn book on them, like basically on anything that you want. again, it is somewhat agnostic, not benign. It's neutral, not benign. And this is where it's like, okay, this is why people need to know, I think, that maybe there's a burn book on them and think twice about clicking on things. And also, this is part of the reason why I've said, well, I need to focus on unethical use of these things, because it's all under the surface. It just requires like a professional judgment. And unless you go in and audit, like even like, unless you audit these things, the tech companies, they're headquartered in places like, you know, Sweden and Iceland and whatever. Sorry, not Europe. But, you know, just take it offshore, have an offshore company, launder the data through a CRM, and then like you're off the GDPR hook. But what you do then is just target people through their friends. So you could still, by proxy, because of the way Facebook functions, is that you can do friends of friends and friends of friends and lookalike audiences. Now, let me tell you a bit what lookalike is. So once you've built a database of people who are pretty much going to buy everything that you sell, you can upload an Excel spreadsheet to Facebook, and it's basically got their information, and you can actually target them with what's called a lookalike audience, okay? And what that will do is, based on Facebook's best judgment, these people are more as likely to buy as the people on that list. So what Facebook does is it uses all of its fucking intelligence and cross-referencing and what's similar and everything between all of those users, because you've already done all that work. You know roughly that they're kind of the same thing. And you can sell them, you know, and you've been, you know, A/B testing them. You've sort of set up a few different pages to test all this stuff. You're gathering and refining that email list. You can then upload that list to Facebook and go, find anyone else that's like this, please, and sell. And so that's where it becomes that, you know, and you can do that on any page. So you can say, okay, even if let's say you like The Simpsons and you like Ricky Gervais, and you also like spontaneous combustion kits for babies, what you could do is, because there's an overlap and a crossover between audiences, you could actually run an ad that targets everyone who engages with Ricky Gervais or anyone who's got X credit score. Thankfully, Facebook have grown some ethics and said you can't, you know, target based on politics or, you know, various other things, but it's irrelevant because you can extrapolate someone's politics from what they like in culture anyway. You can tell someone's politics pretty much straight away with like what comedians they're fans of. Like that, without a doubt. Like if you like a page, it's a meaningless rule. Okay. And it's mostly self-declaration and stuff, right, with Facebook. So it's like I can go through that another time. That's another whole fucking 3-hour session just on that. But basically, you know, you can target people, not only the people in your email list. So you can upload an email list of people, right, and go, find me people like this list. Okay, and that's why when I shared those ads for Joe Rogan today, I was like, well, the fact that they got 76 variations of this ad would tell me that they're using lookalike audiences to try and get, you know, and they're obviously always A/B testing these things. So if there's variance, it means that there's testing going on. Usually you would just upload one list and it, you know, not be too segmented or whatever. That's what happens when you see the same ad 76 times. That means it's different targeting and different audiences. If it's different creative, that's different, okay? But this is a different thing. So they're obviously using separate lists and separate, like very, very narrow lists. But then you've got, so you got that, but then you can target people based. I can run through the ad targeting at some point. If you run that, then, you know, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I might actually do something where I show this very, very basic. It's very fucking. That's a team's job. Running Facebook stuff on its own, if you're running any kind of campaign, it's pretty much a full-time job. But, you know, there's teams dedicated to this shit. I just know it on the micro. I just manage that stuff. I know roughly how it works. And, you know, I got certified back in the day, but it's not, you know, it's not, definitely not my area of expertise. Every time it fucking changes the interface, every time I have to learn it again. It's like, fucking hell. But, you know, what you can see is that you can target based on all sorts of things, lots of shit, but also like with lookalike audiences, but also with, you know, if you're a fan, if you build a fan profile, so someone who is a fan of Ricky Gervais, The Simpsons, The Office, and Doug Stanhope, for example, okay, that crossover, that Venn diagram in the middle is going to create a different psychological profile than, say, someone who likes Ricky Gervais and Seinfeld, for example. So they're different. You see that how like, and so once you add in a few, you start to refine and refine and refine just by doing all of that. And if you use that for a political ad or anything like that without declaring it, and again, it's not a political ad if you're just selling socks or you're just selling merch. It's not, you don't have to declare it. And this is where this stuff hides underneath. And you go, okay, well, so what I would do is sell. So that's what pretty much how I would approach it, would be with the eco angle, and try to find some cross-reference between those who love eco-tourism. Again, like, you know, targeting those major communities of people who like those or participate in those groups regularly or pages regularly. You know, have children, have young children, post regularly. So frequency of posting, because that, you know, is correlated with mental health. Unless you're me and it's your job, shut up. But, you know, if you're just an average person who doesn't do it for a job, then, you know, it's an indicator. And then you've got, you know, there's all these creative things that you could actually target someone and ascertain whether they were primed to buy this product pretty quickly. But then, you know, even if they're not, you can just nudge them, like give it 3 months and you just sort of nudge them in that direction and make them more paranoid. So they start, again, it's just a matter, because things are so easy to set up, you can just set up there's all these gaps. Okay. And what I would do is, yeah, have a not-for-profit that was like dedicated to a couple of different, it's a lot of effort for like 10 units. I wouldn't do this for 10 units, but if it's to nudge an election, or like if the stakes are high and it's a massive long-term, huge lifetime value of the customer, you know, and there's massive incentives in place to do this stuff, then, you know, you can see how, as long as there's a return on investment, that's the buzzword, they don't really give a shit. So what they do is set up all these foundations or front groups or like not-for-profits who then become clients of a digital agency. So then you would use, so what I would do is say, okay, well, we've got, all right, so I've got 4 mates. You can be the director of that, director of that, director of that. We're all on the board, but we'll just do that thing. So what we'll do is my agency will service these 4 organizations. And what we'll do is we will run, we've also got first of all, we've got the tech. So we've got a separate business dedicated to building out the CRM and the data side. So that's siloed. No one knows that. So if anyone comes looking, you know, it's over there. They're separate business, totally separate. Prove it. And then what we'll do is we will just run those accounts, but you're all separate clients. You're all separate clients, but because it's, you know, Facebook just bills us because we're an agency. We got that partnership, you know, we just break it down. We'll let you know. We'll give you a report. You pay us a retainer for marketing services, okay? Because you need that shit. You need all those services, managed services and all that stuff. But, you know, the details of that are irrelevant. Totally legit. So what we'll do is we'll just you know, post lots of information and articles for people and try to get them onto the website. But what we will do is be building this list and refining this in the background so that, you know, like let's just focus on getting the 10 fucking, let's just focus on the 10. But it's going to take some time, fellas. It's not an easy sell. Not an easy sell. But, you know, we just got to find them. It's how this all works. It's not difficult to do. I know I kind of just wanted, too much. There's too much. The problem is that I got to explain complicated things and no one cares. And it's probably quite important information that no one cares about. So cool. And it's also complicated. Excellent. So I'm going to do a little bit more on this stuff in the next couple of streams because I'm just tracking this Joe Rogan campaign because it's an interesting example. But, you know, like, this is the first one of these. Again, I'll just learn from it and do another one that's a bit more structured. I need to actually get some materials that are like generic because most of the stuff I have sitting on a hard drive has branding on it, and they're all non-disclosured and stuff. So I gotta repurpose some stuff. Also, I don't want to give out my fucking shit for free. Pay for it. Sick of giving stuff away for free. Anyway, I'm gonna go. I love you. I didn't really explain very well, but you can see, again, you can just see how easy I could just go, yep, all right, well, do it through the environmental movement, sell lots of information, nudge the person, approach influencers. Even if they won't sell that thing, they'll sell the other thing, which means that we can then get, so the other thing you need to know is that as soon as an influencer is paid to do a promotion, that usually part of that contract is that they will also hand over their mailing list. Okay, so what you can do is watch their audience's reaction, and you may find just, again, scooping up the fucking 10%, scooping up the small amount of people until you get the people that will buy, no questions asked. That's the way that you do this stuff. And that's why, you know, when I say that the radicalization thing is identical to fucking lipstick as it is to ISIS, I'm not lying. It's just, again, it's a matter of will and time and resources. And that was the thing that I saw sort of happening, and that's why I keep seeing happening, and I keep seeing the same fucking playbook weaponized over and over again, and nobody's addressing it, except for the fuckhead dudes on Twitter who seem to think that they know that nothing is organic anymore. They know better than me. Of course they do. Fucking assholes. I hate men. Okay, I don't hate men. I hate these fucking unsolicited essay people. Fuck these guys. Oh, can someone nudge them off a cliff, please? Anyway, I'm gonna go. I love you. Thank you for your precious life seconds. I'm sorry about the light and stuff. I'll probably be back maybe tomorrow if I feel like it, but yeah,